After looking at the most important freshmen that are coming into the Sun Devils team this year, we're going to take a look at the most important transfers that are coming in.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out my everydayers who are here every day. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your shows. Stay in touch by following me on Twitter at RichieBrats36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. If you have not hit subscribe on YouTube yet, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We are at 865. We have made a ridiculous amount of progress just in the last month, so I know that we can get to 1,000, and once we get there, we'll find a way to celebrate together as a channel. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the transfers that are coming in as we teed off at the top of the show. But there's one tiny little twist. And it's not a big one. It's just that we are not counting Sam Leavitt. And the reason why we are not counting Sam Leavitt is because he's the quarterback. It goes without saying. He is your starting quarterback. From my understanding, Kenny Dillingham is pretty much all but confirmed he is your starting quarterback. He beat out Jaden Rashada in spring ball. He has been the best quarterback in fall camp. He has the most upside. He's the youngest guy. It just makes too much sense for him to be the most important player here out of the transfers. And that's not fun, in my opinion. We can't just have a list and go, oh, well, A, B, C, and D, but the quarterback. That's just not fun to me. So, yes, Sam Leavitt is the most important transfer for the Sun Devils. But besides Sam Leavitt, that's what we got to talk about. And I will let you know right now, it was very difficult to narrow down this list to just 3 candidates. Now, keep in mind, I do have some honorable mentions similar to yesterday. There are more honorable mentions, and I even had to cut some. And you're going to see there's still a lot of honorable mentions here. I have 7 names down, and I almost cut it in half because there were that many guys who could play pivotal roles for the Sun Devils this year. But that's a good place to start, is the honorable mentions. The first is the lone guy on offense that is an honorable mention for me, and that's Raleek Brown. And the reason why Raleek, for me, is a honorable mention, he's super explosive, he's super high upside, all that good stuff. I don't know how this backfield ends up shaking out. It may even be Alton McCaskill, another transfer running back that outshined him, and he's looked like one of the best running backs and one of the best offensive players on the team. We're waiting to see Raleek Brown get to that point, but he is an honorable mention for me because he can do it as a runner, as a receiver, and he has skills on special teams. So if he is able to reach that potential and that upside, then yeah, he is one of the most important transfers for you. For what it's worth, Alton McCaskill could also be very important. My next 6 honorable mentions are all on the defensive side of the football. We'll talk first about a couple of Texas players in edge rusher Chamon Metayer and defensive interior guy Zach Swanson. I have a sneaky feeling about Metayer. And you listen to the show, you know that we are all about Clayton Smith, Prince Dorbah, Elijah O'Neal. Chamon Metayer just feels like someone that we aren't talking a lot about. And I'm not saying he comes out and absolutely dominates, but there is this sneaky feeling. It's just me personally. I have a sneaky feeling that Chamon Metayer could end up being a very important pass rusher. Zach Swanson, I think, will be one of the pivotal players along the defensive interior. You have CJ Fight as one of your defensive tackles. Next to him, we'll talk about one of those guys that I think is the plug and play. But there's some other guys to rotate. You got Jacob Richcon-Gaika. You've got Tristan Monday is returning. You bring in Zach Swanson. And Swanson is so interesting because he's got some pass rushing potential from the interior. He feels like someone that you can flex around in a 3-3-5 front and have some fun with him. Next level of the defense, Keyshawn Elliott. Keyshawn seems to be this year's Trey Brown, the veteran linebacker that you're going to put in the middle of your defense and get all the young guys ready to go. He's a good tackler. There's turnover potential with him. He's going to be pivotal for the linebacker position. The reason why I don't have him in my top 3 is because the depth at linebacker makes it really murky, and he's not guaranteed to be in that starting role. It just feels really good. The last 3 guys are all in the secondary. You've got LT Welsh, who did not make my top 3 simply because the guy who did, I think, is going to be more important. But LT Welsh is potentially more than likely your number 1 corner on this team right now. I understand, or it's been brought to my attention at least, that he hasn't had the strongest training camp. It doesn't help that I haven't been able to get out there and see for myself, but based off of what I got to see in spring, based off of what I got to see last Saturday, I still think he looks pretty good. And until further notice, he is corner 1 for me. You also got to talk about the 2 safeties, Miles Rouser and Kamari Wilson, as potential stars for this defense. Kamari Wilson, especially someone who's got all of the upside in the world as a former super duper high 4-star recruit out of high school. He's a guy to keep an eye out on. And I would not be surprised if we saw Kamari Wilson force his way onto the field, get to a point where you just cannot leave him off. All right, that's enough honorable mentions. Let's get into my top 3 guys now. First and foremost, tight end Chamon Metayer. Now, we talked yesterday about Jaden Fortier, and Fortier is back in practice. He is seemingly healthy and practicing, all that good stuff, full pads and everything. That being said, it was also brought to my attention that he is still probably not good to go the start of the year. So I can absolutely own up that I got very excited about it. He nonetheless is still one of the most important freshmen if he's able to get onto the football field. But if he's not, then you're going to be looking for a tight end to be able to step into a role in a Kenny Dillingham offense that likes to use the tight end position. Last year, we saw Jalen Conyers was a focal point of the offense. We saw that Bryce Pierre as tight end 2 was still used a lot. Kenny Dillingham wants a tight end to be able to plug and play to this offense and do a little bit of everything. Metayer feels like the best chance, the best candidate to put into that role. He's really athletic for somebody that's built like him. He's quick. He's got good hands. He's able to box out. It looks like the perfect player. Now, I would not go as far as to say he's a perfect seamless replacement for Jalen Conyers. He's as good as it's going to get. And you also have to keep in mind that this is a young quarterback with Sam Leavitt, who played 4 games a year ago, and he's going to need some help. This ASU offense lost Jalen Conyers. They lost Elijah Badger. They are dealing with a lot of changes in their pass catching room. It doesn't help that you have a new face of quarterback too. It would have been hard on Jaden Rashada, but it's going to be even more difficult on not Sean Leavitt, Sam Leavitt. So the best thing that you can do is find a way to give him a dump off option, somebody that he can just get the ball to and let him make a play with it. And Metayer is able to fill that need that you have. Check that little checkbox off. He's also a good enough player. Like I said, he's very well-rounded and someone that is an explosive receiver that I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up throwing up 4, 5, 6 touchdowns this year. Would not be surprised. Wouldn't blink twice at it. It would be one of those where it's like, yep, the offense is looking for a strong figure at the tight end spot. Chamon Metayer fits that need. And again, Kenny Dillingham wants to run a pro-style offense. So even beyond passing to the tight end, you're going to see these guys do run blocking and pass blocking too. This is where I think you'll see a lot of Marqueston Douglas potentially come and get involved. But Metayer will also be asked to do that, and he's going to be asked to be that all-around guy. I don't think this is a offense that's going to say, you are going to do this specifically and nothing else. So I don't think you're going to look at Chamon Metayer and go, you're the pass-catching tight end, and you're going to look at Marqueston Douglas, and you're going to go, you are the run-blocking tight end. Kenny's going to ask these guys to do everything. You can't just pigeonhole these guys into one specific niche role. So Metayer needs to be able to fill all of those needs, check off all those boxes, and be someone that is reliable in any kind of circumstance. 3rd and short, 3rd and long, 1st and 10, 1st and goal. Wherever it is, you need to know that Metayer is going to be available and reliable in that kind of role. So it is a really big deal that Chamon Metayer is able to live up to expectations or at least play at a high enough level. But I'm really curious how the offense just rolls this year. If they do lean heavy on the tight end or if it's like your third option. We'll kind of wait and see. I want to move to the defensive side of the football now, and I want to talk about a defensive lineman who I think is looking for a big-time role this year. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You can save with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. You can try the zone deals where you choose a section and Game Time chooses the seat. They have a feature that you can toggle and see the total up front. That means there is no surprise fee at checkout. It's your all-in pricing feature, ladies and gentlemen. You can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy so you know what to expect when you arrive. The best part is their lowest price guarantee, which means that Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONCalls for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On College Football podcast with great friend of mine, Spencer McLaughlin, as we get you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion of the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics. This includes conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoff, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ladies and gentlemen, back into our conversation now. Let's go ahead and flip to the defensive side of the football, where I have a guy in mind who, if time is a flat circle and we can plug in the holes here. That's not the word. Connect the dots. There you go. If you can connect the dots, it makes sense that this player is going to waltz into a very, very important role for this team. And that's Jeff Clark along the defensive line. He is your veteran transferring in from Louisville. He played 1 year with the Cardinals. Previous to that, he was at Georgia State. Very quality football player. You look at his stats, it's a good resume. Now you look at the Sun Devils, and there's a few things to think about. First of all, the defensive line is perceivably a strength for you. You've got plenty of edge rushers. You've got CJ Fight at one of your defensive tackle spots, and you've got a really healthy competition next to him. Again, you've got Clark. You've got Jacob Richkongaika, Zach Swanson, who we mentioned earlier. You've got Tristan Monday is back. Blazin Lana Wong is there. There's tons of talent along the defensive interior. But the one thing that really stands out to me is that ASU has favored a veteran player. And by veteran, I mean a graduate player. Like it's so coincidental that it's not a coincidence. 2 years ago, keep in mind, this is a different coaching staff 2 years ago. Nesta Jade Silvera, graduate transfer from Miami, plugs into the defense, and he is instantly one of the most important players on the defense, period, let alone the defensive line. Last year, Kenny Dillingham's first year, they bring in Deshaun Mallory, transfer from Michigan State, graduate transfer. Comes to this program, waltzes into a very important position on defense, let alone the defensive line. Both of those guys played at a high level, too. Nesta Jade Silvera gets drafted. Deshaun Mallory is in training camp right now, the last I saw. Jeff Clark can go right into that same role. And I mean, like, cookie cutter kind of situation. Look at the similarities. He's a graduate transfer. He's someone that has a lot of playing experience and is coming to Arizona State to fill a void along the defensive interior where they are looking to replace a veteran guy and plug him next to a young player to lead the defensive line and be that signal caller, I guess, is the closest thing I can think of for that group. Well, Jeff Clark, check. He is exactly what we have seen the Sun Devils favor with two different coaching staffs. It's just something that the program values. Will that be the case for third year in a row? I have a feeling it might. You also, like I said, you're looking for someone to essentially be kind of your signal caller on the defensive line. What I mean by that is there's veterans for sure, but there's also a lot of young kids and guys who, even if they're not young, don't necessarily have a ton of starting experience. This is where you have a guy like Jeff Clark that has this super duper important role in getting the guys ready. He's only here for a year. So what is his legacy? What's his impact going to be in Tempe? Hopefully, it's not just playing at a high level, but it is setting up the team for future success, being able to pass that torch to the next young guys, helping the guys that have seen some pretty decent playing time start to take that next step forward so that when Arizona State does call on them for that bigger role, they're ready for it. You're also just, you need someone who's been there, done that. It really hurt the team when you lost Anthony Cooper back in the spring to an ACL tear. It was absolutely brutal because he was supposed to be this spot for where Jeff Clark is going to be. So now it's similar to Metayer, like it makes too much sense. There's the history there over the last couple of years. There's the fact that he's just a good football player. You also factor in that ASU's defense is going to be functioning with some very important pivotal veterans at each level of the defense. Keyshawn Elliott, potentially that guy at linebacker. In the secondary, you're potentially looking at Xavier Alford. Miles Rouser will bring in some experience as well. Defensive line, you've got a couple of guys off the edge, and in the interior, there's not necessarily this proven stalwart veteran. Jeff Clark feels like that guy. I really just see this as history repeating itself, and time is a flat circle, as I've said. It just makes a lot of sense. And it's one of the reasons why I think he's one of the most important players that's coming into the transfer portal for the Sun Devils. Is he is exactly what you're looking for to replace a role on the team that is it's really important for them. I don't think that a lot of teams look at the defensive tackle position, and see it as this super important role the way that the Sun Devils have over the last handful of years. Because even before that, like DJ Davidson was very important 3 years ago for the Sun Devils. They like having that kind of consistency at the position. And Jeff Clark, if everything goes right, can give them what they're looking for in the consistency department. Jeff Clark, very, very important player. More important than you may realize. But there is one more player on the defensive side of the football that is lurking in the secondary that I believe might be the most important player on defense. We'll talk about him next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One more time, wherever you get your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. If you have not hit subscribe on YouTube yet, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and help us get to 1,000 followers. Once we get to that number, we'll find a way to celebrate, whether it's an ice bucket challenge or anything else that you guys can come up with. Always open to suggestions. Let's round out the conversation today. The last player that I think is the most important of these three guys we highlighted, I think this player is probably the most important of all of them. That's Cole Martin. Cole Martin is going to be filling in a huge role for the Sun Devils. Jordan Clark is gone. Jordan Clark last year was someone who was all over the place. You played him at nickel. He played in the secondary, or not the secondary, in the safety position. He played near the line of scrimmage. He was a vocal leader. Like, he was all that in a bag of chips for you. You have to replace that. The leadership, that's going to have to come from a team effort. I don't think there's one guy on this team that can embody that role immediately. Could they get there? Yeah, of course, and you hope they do. But for week one, you're not going to have that guy. That's the rah-rah that Jordan Clark is. But what you do need is to have someone that can play up to his level of competition. His role with the team, in more ways than one, the roles that he had are so important. You cannot afford to not have that level of play from any of your guys this year. You can't afford to not have it. Excuse me. You need it. It's one of the things that led ASU's defense to so much success last year. And they were a good defensive unit last year, despite what you see in the box scores. Part of the reason for that was Jordan Clark's ability to be all over the football field. Cole Martin is more than likely going to be slotted into that role, no pun intended, because he's probably looking at a nickel role. And he's going to be asked to play at a high level. The good news is he played at a high level last year at Oregon. He decided to transfer. He decided to come home. This is a Basha kid. This is like a storybook feel to it. Like, the hometown kid goes and gets a taste of a big-time program and learns some really important things from a defensive guru like Dan Lanning. Comes back home, and now he is the star in the desert. It's too good to be true. As I've said many times on the show, it makes too much sense. Now you have a player that can take on multiple roles. In a worst case scenario, you need him to be able to play the nickel position at a very high level, because ASU is going to be valuing having that guy who can play in the slot, play near the line of scrimmage. Potentially create some turnovers. I don't know if that's a necessity. You would really like it. Cole Martin is going to be placed into that position, into that role, so he needs to be able to step up. If everything goes right, he should be able to inherit that role, play at a high level. You're hoping that things can start falling into place elsewhere. We'll see when that happens. Now, for what it's worth, someone in my comments did bring up Mason Williams. I do want to mention Mason Williams is also someone who makes a lot of sense for that role, someone who has safety and corner experience. I would not be surprised if Mason ended up having a bigger role this upcoming year. We might have to talk about him a little bit more on a sleepers edition of the pod. But talking about Cole Martin again, he feels like the plug-and-play guy. He feels like the easiest solution, if you will, to the hole that the Sun Devils have in the nickel, in the slot, the inside corner position. It's almost too perfect. Now you need him to be able to step up. And this is where he is so important. You have everything that's lined up for him. Can you actually take it off of paper and put it onto the field? So we can talk about how perfect it is until we're blue in the face. We need to be able to see it on the field. It's detrimental for the success of that position. It's detrimental for the success of the secondary. It's detrimental for the success of the defense as a whole. You need Cole Martin to play at a high level. And in another worst case scenario, this is for the secondary, not for Cole Martin. You may need him to play outside corner. If ASU was not able to get any stability or good production or good play from the current stable of guys they have outside at corner for the boundary, Cole Martin might have to bounce outside. And if he does, he becomes that much more valuable to your team. Having that player who hopefully you can put into one role and have him excel, that's already great. Down the road, you would love to explore more options. For this year, we need him to dominate inside the slot. But if he is asked to move around, this is where he becomes so important. He is, if you did a ranking of just based off of talent, potential, upside, downside, ceiling, floor, of the transfers that are coming in, Cole Martin is no worse than like 3. I think the only guys you would argue would be like Raleek Brown and Kamari Wilson. Other than that, Cole Martin is one of the most talented incoming transfers for this team. We'll get to that point, but you just need him to play at a high level at the end of the day. You need him to play at a high level. That's the bottom line. That's the end game for you. Have Cole Martin play at a high level, the secondary is going to play better. As long as Cole Martin is playing well, it's going to help everything else function. You take away the middle of the field and the underneath routes because Cole Martin is able to suck up everything on the inside. Perfect. That is a great situation. Now you just need your boundary corners to do good. Now you just need the safeties to play up to their potential. But as this team will tell you, the philosophy that they have is do your 111th. Well, Cole Martin doing his 111th is going to do a lot for the rest of this team. His 111th is going to help the rest of the secondary, everyone in the front 7, the coverage for everyone around him. He is pivotal. His role on the team could end up being detrimental to the entirety of the defense. That's as far as I'm concerned. Cole Martin plays well, this defense is going to play well. It's not going to play terrible if he plays terrible. It's not going to play elite if he plays elite. But he is going to help set the tone for how well or how not well the defense plays this year. 3 most important transfers coming in for me: Chamon Metayer, Jeff Clark, Cole Martin. Who are your 3 most important? Who am I sleeping on? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you get your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Shout out my everydayers who are here every day. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. And again, if you haven't subscribed on YouTube yet, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and help us get to 1,000 subscribers, and we'll find a way as a channel to celebrate together. Guys, you're the best as always. We will be back again tomorrow. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about yet, but we are potentially going to look at the most important returning players, which feels like an impossible list. So I'm not sure if that's feasible. If you guys really want to see it, let me know and we'll take a look. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On.